So let's just take a look at the concept of being green. I recycle. I have an Energy Star washer. I ride my bike to work. I eat vegan. Being green often looks like things you do and things you buy. It's reflected in products. This is the idea of green capitalism. This is the idea of like showing that you're sustainable by which car you bought. But even more often, being green looks like things you didn't do and things you didn't buy. I didn't buy that sandwich since it was wrapped in plastic. I didn't drive to the store. Instead of being able to show off that you have a Prius, which represents how green you are, you might just not have a car. So you have nothing to point at. Unless you become like obsessed with your bike and showing people your bike all the time, which some people try to do that. But I personally like walking everywhere, and there's nothing to show off when you walk everywhere. So being green just looks like making more work for yourself. It looks like your cupboards are bare because you're putting off the next drive to the store, or it looks like going to the store takes you a long time and makes you all sweaty since you bike there or walk there now. It doesn't look good. It's not well advertised. Environmentalism to a consumer just looks inconvenient. So it's not a very easy sell, especially when this is what you're trying to advertise up against the tidal wave of consumer advertisements constantly bombarding people on the internet, on the news, on their smartphone. The problem is it's much harder to advertise a non-action. It's hard to advertise the lack of a product. There's no symbolic artifact to represent a non-thing or an inaction. And no one would advertise it anyways because no one can make any money off of it. So we have advertising continue to inflate and manufacture more desires. People continue to buy more products. Green products are introduced, but consumption just continues to increase. Global carbon footprint just continues to go up, continues to be matched by income bracket. And you have that green tax again, because there's the basics of supply and demand. More demand means higher prices. So when environmentalism is finally trending, which was the whole thing we want environmentalism to catch on. In a capitalist world, that means expensive, crappy green products side by side their cheap counterparts. Our inability to buy green is limited as much by our paycheck as by our morals. The more trendy it is, the more in demand it is, the more expensive those products will become. So this is the situation we're in. We have greenwashing, where we have products that pretend to be green that aren't even green, a brown paper bag, a green label, a logo of a leaf, but there's nothing green about it. Then this middle one I kind of made up, but I call it the green sheen. It's sort of like greenwashing, but the product is actually green. It's got a lower carbon footprint, but it's the crappiest toothbrush you've ever had, and all the bristles are falling out in your teeth. So it's like that, like it's got that green sheen that makes it so like they can charge a lot for it and everything, and you paid that green tax, but it's so crappy, but it's the only like green one on the shelf, so you still end up buying it, and they still like have no incentive to make the product any better. And so the green tax, somehow you still paid more for that crappy toothbrush than any other one on the shelf. And so, on one side we have greenwashing, it's not even green. On the other side, it is green, but it sucks, and you still had to pay more for it. And these things are ingrained in the concept of the capitalist system, in supply and demand. There's no way out of this trend and this dynamic, unless you were to have huge policy changes, which don't seem to be coming anytime soon in America. Definitely not in time, which is, yesteryear. And so we still have this state of the world. This graph goes all the way up to 2024, so this is like a current graph. Just keeps getting worse, guys. We have made not even a dent. So we've all heard of it by now, virtue signaling. The problem is buying green wins points, and not buying anything doesn't look like anything. Being green is in reality is more about elbow grease than buying things. So if advertising maintains a consumer culture, being green looks a lot like just being poor. And here's a little simple graph, kind of like an infographic. You buy green, cool, and points. You buy not green, it's still cool because you got something and people get to see it and you show it off or whatever. Or you get to use it, you have some utility gained or something. But not buying anything, it's just there's no points, there's nothing cool. You just don't have anything. Yeah, this is reduce. Out of the 3 R's, it's the most important one. And so you end up with this weird dynamic where the more sustainable you're living, the more you're just treated like a poor person who isn't making it in the world. Here they're like, phew, what a workout. I just pummeled these weeds into a paper pulp so I can make my own paper. And the other person's like, I have some real paper if you need some. And that's the thing, is we're immersed in this consumer world where it is still maintained that these consumer items are so easy and cheap to get that we're surrounded by them. We're immersed in them. We can't get away from them. We have no way to distance ourselves from them. And here you'll see this strange dynamic arise over and over where it's like, should I say no to the paper? Like, did it really, if it's not that expensive to them or they got it for free at work or something, then you take the paper oftentimes, metaphorically. But then they're keeping their own disbelief going. They're believing that you wouldn't be able to survive. But you have to look out for these other dynamics which can form, where people can believe that you are therefore not proving anything, you're not reducing your carbon footprint. They don't feel inspired to reduce their carbon footprint. They might even feel inspired to continue growing their income and growing their carbon footprint and feel like they're the one helping you. This dynamic actually covers a lot of topics that we'll be covering in the next few lessons. The spectacle refers to what can be seen, what is most obvious, what grabs people's attention. This is part of the issue, is that people, especially in a world of advertising, people's attention is constantly being tugged on for profit and being pulled away from the actual sustainable behaviors we should be doing. The nature of charity is not quite what you think, probably, and that's going to be another lesson about how charity can be used to actually control another population by causing them to be dependent on you. But the real hidden issue here is individualism and the fact that, on one hand, the money people think that they are individuals because they do everything with money. The people who try not to do things with money see themselves as just part of humanity and they help each other out. But with so many people putting in work into the money world and so few people putting in work in the free world, the free world consistently looks stunted when compared side by side to the money world, which is part of why people continue to choose the money world, because the spectacle draws them towards the money world. And because of the dynamic you have when you don't have enough people trying to invent the free world, you have this sort of impoverishment, and we have individualism having divided everyone, so you just have like one person here or there. You rarely have a big community. And so one person is trying to like reinvent how to sustainably do all parts of society, while the money people just like do their one role in society. And then instead of comparing like the sheer amount of human labor going into one experiment versus the other, instead it's seen as like, oh, well, I guess money's the way to do it because your thing's not working. when it's like obviously you need actual human labor to go into a system for it to function. So if most people are withholding their labor from that system and putting all their time and energy into the money world, of course the free world won't look like much. And then you get this dynamic of rich and poor developing because of the money world. And because of non-participation in the money world just leads to being poor in terms of the money world. And then to collectivize efforts is put in the context of charity, because it's not like you're considered an equal, you're considered down and out, you're considered poor, you're considered dependent on the technological society that you rejected. So when you go reach out for charity and get help from the system instead of from people in the same position as you, because there's not that many people doing that, and all of them are up against this sort of dynamic where they're becoming poor in their effort to do it. So then you're reeled back in with charity. You feel like a charity case. You feel like you're wasting your time. You're wasting other people's time. And then the individualism that you grew up with starts to come back. And you too fall for the spectacle again. And this complex dynamic actually creates a sizable population of people who have attempted to reject the system and then found themselves struggling because of their attempt to reject the system. And then they had to go back into the system and reject their rejection of the system. So then they become like a cheerleader for the system, and whenever someone else rejects the system, they're against them rejecting the system because they feel kind of offended that someone else would try to do something that they didn't manage to do. And they don't want to feel like they gave up too soon or something. They have to form their identity now around this concept that there is literally nothing they can do except submit to the system. And that's actually the identity most people end up forming. Either they grow up with it or they form it after some wrestling in like teenager years or early adulthood. But I'm going to go into each of those subjects in their own lesson also. So then instead of being more like you, they're literally becoming opposite from you and just continuing to see their own reality tunnel and ignore everything you're trying to do. And what are you trying to do? This is what you're trying to do. This is what we should all be trying to do. But the more of this you do, the closer you get to the holy grail of just having a zero carbon footprint, the more you look like you just have nothing and everyone's worried about you. They think you're going insane or something. Like, you gotta treat yourself better. You can't change the world by sacrificing yourself. Man, they have so many pre-made phrases that they just repeat. Like, you can't pour from an empty cup. It's like, the cup's not empty. I just didn't buy the cup. I made it. So, but you think I just look poor now? And this also has a psychological toll on you. Like, you start to lose the inspiration you had to set out to have a lower carbon footprint. When you never get a pat on the back or a nod and no one's proud of you, they feel judged. They don't like what you're doing. They try to stop you. They try to talk you out of it. They don't want you to do this. Everyone around you is united against you, trying to make sure you continue to be a consumer because they find it offensive that you're living differently from them. And then it makes it like very strange for you because you're like, well, how am I supposed to get along with you guys who don't want me to reduce my carbon footprint and you guys who make no effort to reduce your own carbon footprint? And then I can be cool and not mention it, but if you keep mentioning it, you keep making it seem like I'm just a crazy person, obviously I'm not going to enjoy hanging out with you anymore. And then they're going to be like, see, now he doesn't even hang out with us anymore. He's totally gone off the deep end. Yeah, because you guys are assholes. I'm trying to do what's right for the world. and I'm just getting nothing but ridicule and worry, stress. People are worried about me. They're stressed out. What is going to happen to him?